We have sad news to report out of the film industry tonight. Actress Hayden Panettiere has died at the age of 36, her father confirming her passing just a short time ago. Panettiere was known for her roles in the hit shows Heroes and Nashville.
She was a baby before she could even sit up on her own, and she was already in front of a camera. Decades later, that same face, one that grew up on soap operas, superhero television, and country music dramas, is now the center of a very different kind of headline. Hayden Panettiere died on August 16, 2026, at the age of 36, just days short of what would have been her 37th birthday. What she leaves behind is not a simple story. It is a career that spans more than 3 decades, an 11-year-old daughter growing up on another continent, a family that has already buried one child too young, and a fortune whose real size still isn't agreed upon by anyone who has tried to add it up. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why. The news came on a Sunday afternoon, and it moved through entertainment media faster than almost anything else this year. According to statements from the Greenville Police Department, officers and emergency medical crews responded to a call about an unresponsive woman at a residence in Greenville, South Carolina, at around 1:51 in the afternoon. She was found in cardiac arrest. Paramedics attempted advanced life support measures on the scene, but she could not be revived, and she was pronounced dead a short time later. Her representative confirmed the death to national outlets that evening, and her father, Skip Panettiere, released a short statement describing his daughter as an incredible light and a force of nature, who brought love and joy to everyone who knew her, both personally and through the millions of people who had watched her on screen for most of her life. He asked simply for privacy while the family grieved. The Greenville County Coroner's Office completed an autopsy the following day and reported that there were no signs of physical trauma. Officials said the official cause and manner of death remained pending further toxicology and additional testing, and police stated publicly that a preliminary investigation had not turned up any signs of foul play or suspicious circumstances. Some early reporting noted that dispatch communications during the initial 911 response had referenced a possible overdose, but that detail came from radio traffic in the moment, not from any confirmed medical finding, and authorities have been careful to say that no official cause has been determined. It's worth sitting with that distinction for a second, because a lot of what spread online in the first 24 hours blurred the line between an early dispatch note and an actual medical conclusion. As of now, the real answer is still being worked out by professionals, not by headlines. What made the news land so hard for so many people wasn't only the suddenness of it. It was the timing. Just months earlier, in the spring of 2026, Panettiere had been doing something she hadn't done in years, talking openly and at length about her own life. She released a memoir titled This Is Me, A Reckoning through Grand Central Publishing in May, and she toured through podcasts and daytime interviews to promote it, sounding by most accounts more grounded and self-aware than she had in a long time. Fans who showed up to a signing event that month in Manhattan weren't necessarily there out of nostalgia for a show they watched as teenagers. A lot of them were there because they recognized pieces of their own struggles in what she was choosing to share. That's part of why this loss, for so many people, doesn't feel like a distant celebrity headline. It feels personal because she had just spent months making herself accessible in a way she never had before. To understand why her death is resonating across so many corners of pop culture at once. People who grew up on daytime soaps, people who grew up on superhero television, people who grew up on Music City drama, and even people who only know her voice from a video game, you have to go back to the very beginning of a career that started before she could form full sentences. Hayden Leslie Panettiere was born on August 21, 1989, in Palisades, New York. Her mother, Leslie Vogel, had worked as a soap opera actress herself before eventually managing her daughter's early career, and her father, Alan Skip Panettiere, worked as a fire captain. Hayden appeared in her first television commercial before she was even a year old. By the time she was 4, she had landed a recurring role on the ABC daytime drama, One Life to Live, and a couple of years after that she moved to another long-running soap, Guiding Light, where her character's storyline dealing with leukemia earned her early recognition from a leukemia and lymphoma advocacy organization, a detail that rarely comes up in the tributes circulating this week, but one that shows just how early audiences started connecting with her as more than a novelty child. From there, her career widened out in almost every direction a young performer's career can go. She voiced Princess Dot in Pixar's A Bug's Life. She appeared opposite Denzel Washington in Remember the Titans. She spent her early teenage years bouncing between family-friendly films like Ice Princess and Raising Helen. None of that fully prepared audiences for what came in 2006, when a 15-year-old cheerleader with the ability to heal from any injury turned her into a household name almost overnight. Claire Bennet, her character on NBC's Heroes, kept her on primetime television for 4 seasons and made her one of the most recognizable young actresses in the country. When that show ended in 2010, she stepped almost immediately into another defining role. Juliette Barnes, an ambitious and complicated country music star on the ABC drama Nashville, a part that earned her 2 Golden Globe nominations across 6 seasons. She kept working steadily after that. She played Kirby Reed in Scream 4, and returned to that franchise years later for Scream 6. She lent her voice to Kyrie across the Kingdom Hearts video game series, introducing her to a generation of fans who had never seen a single episode of Heroes. She voiced characters in other games as well, including Until Dawn, and continued taking on film roles through the following decade, including Amber Alert in 2024 and A Breed Apart in 2025. Her final credited role came earlier this year in the psychological thriller, Sleepwalker, released in January 2026, a quiet closing chapter to a career that stretched across daytime soaps, network prestige drama, horror franchises, and animated adventure games, touching nearly every format the industry had to offer. Now let's talk about the number everyone keeps asking about, the fortune. And here's the honest answer: nobody agrees on it. Depending on which outlet or financial tracker you look at, estimates of Hayden Panettiere's net worth at the time of her death range anywhere from roughly $6 million on the more conservative end, up to figures in the $12 to $19 million range on the higher end. That's an unusually wide gap for a star of her profile, and it says something honest about how unreliable celebrity net worth estimates can be once you move past a single reported paycheck. The most consistently cited figure from Celebrity Net Worth places her wealth at around $6 million at the time of her death, built largely on more than 3 decades of acting income, music work, and voiceover projects. Much of that fortune traces back to Nashville. She reportedly earned around $75,000 per episode for her role as Juliette Barnes, across a show that ran for more than 100 episodes, a run that, on its own, likely accounted for several $1 million of her lifetime earnings. Heroes contributed a significant amount as well during its 4-season run, and her film work, including Scream 4, added to that total. Beyond acting, she spent years as the face of major consumer brands, including Neutrogena, Kohl's, and the shoe brand Candies, before one of those partnerships ended abruptly after she spoke publicly about a deeply personal struggle, something we'll get to in a moment. Real estate tells a small side story of its own. In 2008, she purchased a home in the Hollywood Hills for roughly $2.6 million and sold it in 2014 for a little over $3 million. During her years filming Nashville, she also owned a nearly 5,000-square-foot home in the Green Hills neighborhood of Nashville, which she listed and sold for $1.65 million in 2018. A transaction that happened around the same period her personal life was going through significant upheaval behind the scenes. Because the financial picture is genuinely uncertain, it's worth being direct here. Any number you hear thrown around as the truth about her fortune should be treated as an estimate, not a fact. What we can say with more confidence is that she leaves behind a body of professional work built over more than 3 decades, and an 11-year-old daughter who will eventually inherit whatever that estate turns out to actually be worth. Long before questions about money ever came up, though, there was another side to Hayden Panettiere that had nothing to do with acting paychecks at all, and it says a lot about who she was underneath the fame. As a teenager, still years away from legal adulthood in some of these appearances, she became genuinely involved in ocean conservation activism. In 2007, as a spokesperson for a marine conservation campaign, she joined activists from Sea Shepherd Conservation Society in an attempt to disrupt an annual dolphin hunt in Taiji, Japan. The confrontation that followed was later documented in The Cove, a film that went on to win the Academy Award for Best Documentary Feature. She returned to Taiji again in 2010 to continue pressing the issue. That same era of her life included delivering formal protest letters to government representatives calling for restrictions on commercial whaling, and she also became a vegetarian and joined the Celebrity Advisory Board of a children's charity. It's a part of her public record that rarely gets mentioned in the wave of tribute coverage this week, but it mattered to her enough that she kept coming back to it for years, long after the cameras had moved on to other stories. The private side of her life, the part she didn't talk about publicly until she chose to, unfolded mostly over the following decade. In 2009, she began a relationship with Ukrainian heavyweight boxing champion Vladimir Klitschko, whom she met at a book launch event. The two got engaged in 2013, and in December 2014 she gave birth to their daughter, Kaya Evdokia Klitschko in Hawaii. The relationship eventually ended, and in 2018 Panettiere made what she later described as an incredibly difficult decision. She relinquished primary custody of Kaya to Klitschko while she focused on treatment for alcoholism, substance abuse, and severe postpartum depression. Kaya has spent most of her life since then living with her father in Europe. Speaking about that arrangement years later, Panettiere said her daughter understood she had two parents who loved her, and that the distance between them never stopped the two of them from being close. She described their video calls as conversations that went well beyond small talk. That openness came at a professional cost too. Not long after she discussed her postpartum depression publicly on a daytime talk show, one of her longtime brand partners ended their relationship with her, a decision that looks strikingly out of step now compared with how openly public figures discuss mental health today. Her relationship history after that period was, by her own public account, genuinely difficult. She began dating actor Brian Hickerson not long after her split from Klitschko, and over the following years that relationship became the subject of multiple criminal cases involving allegations of domestic violence. In 2020, Hickerson was arrested and later pleaded no contest to felony charges connected to the relationship, ultimately receiving jail time, probation, mandatory counseling, and a multi-year protective order. Panettiere spoke about the situation publicly at the time, saying she hoped that coming forward with her experience would help other people in abusive relationships find the courage to get help. The two later reconciled, and reports indicate they had traveled together to South Carolina in the days before her death. Grief, too, became something Panettiere had to carry publicly, whether she wanted to or not. In February 2023, her younger brother, actor Jansen Panettiere, died suddenly at the age of 28. His family later shared that the cause was complications from an undiagnosed enlarged heart and aortic valve issues. Hayden wrote about that loss in her memoir and spoke in interviews about a grief and guilt that never fully lifted, once saying that losing her brother felt like losing half of herself. The two had remained close throughout their adult lives, both having grown up almost entirely inside the entertainment industry together. So what does Hayden Panettiere actually leave behind? It's genuinely hard to reduce to one clean answer. There's an estate that different sources value anywhere between $6 million and roughly $19 million, a gap that probably won't close until an official accounting is made public. There's a career spanning more than 3 decades and dozens of film, television, and voice roles, remembered fondly by castmates from Bring It On, Heroes, and Nashville, who described, in tributes posted in the hours after her death, a warmth in private that didn't always come through in her public interviews. There's a daughter, Kaya, now 11 years old, who will grow up able to read her mother's own words rather than second-hand summaries of her life, thanks to the memoir she chose to publish just months before she died. And there's a family, her mother, Leslie Vogel, and her father, Skip Panettiere, who are now grieving a second child lost too soon, just 3 years after burying their son. Whatever the ongoing investigation in South Carolina eventually determines about the cause of her death, one part of her legacy is already permanent and isn't going to change. It's the part built by a teenager who paddled into a Japanese cove because she believed it mattered, a mother who made an agonizing decision about custody because she believed it was best for her daughter, and a woman who spent some of the final months of her life writing down the hardest chapters of her own story, in the hope that someone else going through something similar might feel a little less alone. That's not a number on a balance sheet. That's the part of what she leaves behind that no estimate can really capture. Thank you for watching. If this video gave you a fuller picture of who Hayden Panettiere really was, consider leaving a like and subscribing for more stories like this one.